All right. Hello, everyone. I see we are now live. I'm going to give folks maybe 10 or 15 seconds more to join us. There's always a little bit of a delay in launching our webinars here, but to be back with everyone for another TMF University Town Hall. We try to do these about every quarter as our new cohorts are starting. So welcome to everyone. Now that we've given it a couple seconds here for the web kickoff and for people to join us. Again, Ben Rogers here. I'm kind of the voice behind TMF University, or have historically been the face and the voice behind TMF University. And I'm excited to be back with everyone again. We are looking to kick off our next TMF University cohort in July. So we try to host these town halls, like I said, about every quarter, just because we do get questions every so often, especially as new cohorts are about to start, just about the TMF University program, what we offer, what it is. Even 5 years, almost 5 years into the program, people are joining the industry or just finding out about TMF University and they want more information. So I try to host interactive sessions just to answer questions that we've gotten in recent weeks, to engage with you all with questions that you might have about the program specifically. You can interact and ask questions in real time, and I'll do my best to answer the questions as we go through our conversation today. We'll probably be together maybe 15, 20 minutes or so, depending if there's a lot of folks on, we're having a lot of questions. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer, but I don't have too much to share. Myself, again, this opportunity is really to answer questions that you all have, and then just kind of bring up some maybe changes that have happened in the program. So I'll kind of start there today. So in our most recent cohort that's run April through June, our cohort 2 for this year, we actually introduced 2 new instructors, which I'm really excited about. So John and Keegan, who are my colleagues here at LMK, are now co-delivering the courses with myself, which is nice. So for some of you that maybe historically haven't loved hearing my voice, you've got some new perspectives, some new faces also leading the program now, which I'm really excited about. I think that just brings TMF University to the next level. They'll have different stories to share, different experiences, while we still cover the same material. And I think we all deliver the courses fairly similarly in the sense of, referencing the materials, referencing real world examples. We each kind of have our own personalities. So I'm really excited about that. And that will continue into our next cohort. So again, you'll see some new faces, new voices, new perspectives. So really excited to kind of continue with John and Keegan and TMF University. So if you're kind of excited about that, maybe you're like, oh, I don't love listening to Ben, some new faces will be there. So maybe that'll be exciting for you. Some other things that have changed, our assessment portfolios, or the homework that accompanies TM University for your accreditation. We've updated, we've streamlined, we've kind of reduced or removed rather some duplicate questions, just like we don't want those in the TMF, duplicate documents. We've tried to really streamline our assessment portfolios to ask relevant questions of you based off of the program itself. So some efficiencies there that we're really excited about to hopefully make the assessment portfolio, again, not necessarily easier for people to complete, but having like duplicative questions and asking the same question maybe multiple times. Sometimes you see that an assessment might ask you the same question with different words, and you're like, didn't I just answer this question, 20 minutes ago? So we really went through and made some relevant updates. We also some new examples for documents for review, just to kind of, again, revamp the assessment portfolio process to keep it fresh for 2025. I'm sure a lot of us are aware of recent developments with ICH, GCP, and R3, new guidance that's been released. So we've incorporated that into our materials as well and made some updates. So throughout our time together in TMF University, we will often reference different types of relation and expectation, and that is inclusive of good clinical practice. So we've made sure to update our slides to incorporate that new guidance. We continue to review our slides Most usually about twice a year, just to make sure that that information current, still accurate, still accepted, best practices aligned with kind of the current use of technology that we're seeing. Also, kind of thinking about the future with automation, artificial intelligence, and things like that. So updates to our material as well, just to incorporate the most current guidance and expectations as within the industry. So for our summer cohort 3 that's kicking off in July, there's a couple things to consider. Summer is often a very busy, hectic time for us personally. Maybe we have a lot of travel and we're excited for that. So we're maybe a little apprehensive about taking on some courses during that time. So I do want to address that. So we'll have a couple of different offerings in the summer. So we'll have our traditional model that we've delivered for about the past 5 years, which is essentially one course a week over essentially a 3-month period. There'll be breaks so often, but each level consists of 3 courses, one a week, and then there's usually a short break, and then we'll kick off that next level. So for 9 courses total, we'll continue to deliver that. We'll have 2 options for enrollment. That'll be Wednesdays from 11 a.m. Eastern to 1 p.m. Eastern. And then we're also we will be bringing back our Friday cohorts from 8 a.m. Eastern to 10 a.m. Eastern, again, to try to accommodate as many global schedules as possible. So those opportunities in the past have been very well supported, especially that Friday cohort. Lots of people have seemed to like the Friday mornings or maybe even afternoons for our counterparts in Europe and parts of Asia. So we do try to accommodate schedules as best as possible and kind of diversify our offerings. So again, we're going to go to Wednesdays and Fridays for cohort 3. We're also going to bring back TMF University Accelerate. So that's a program that we launched last year. So it's going to be for folks for TMF University, our traditional model. There's really no requirements for years of experience. But with TMF University Accelerate, that program is an accelerated pathway. So instead of 9 courses total, you will have 3 courses total, one for discovery, one for immersion, and one for mastery. But the courses will be 4 hours long. They're also going to be on Fridays, but it's essentially an accelerated or rapid pathway to accreditation. There is a requirement of a minimum of 2 years experience, specifically with the trial master file. So not necessarily clinical research, but the TMF. You have to have that relevant experience. It'll be part of the registration process. There'll be a few questions required to answer. The reason for that is because this accelerated pathway does remove some of the more foundational things that are discussed in the traditional model that give a fuller picture to maybe those without experience. So they require you to have that level of experience for the accelerate pathway. The cost is the same for kind of the traditional 9 courses or the accelerated 3 courses. You just have to have that experience. So we are excited to offer that opportunity again to folks who be interested. Again, the materials and what's discussed at the core of our learning objectives are exactly the same. Like I said, we maybe just remove some of the foundational stuff, spending less time on discussing what the TMF is, right? Because if you have that experience, you should have that foundation to understand and focus more on the oversight best practices there. Just looking at my notes here to make sure I cover all the things I want to with you all. And again, if you have questions in real time based off any comment making, you can absolutely enter those. I'd be happy to answer those. Oftentimes we do get questions from learners, and I try to discuss this at every town hall. What's expected of you as a learner in TMF University? Are kind of requirements, so to speak, during the class or after the class? So let's talk about that. So in TMF University, the one thing that we really love about our program is that it is live and instructor led, which means myself, John Egan, will be with you in real time to discuss the course material. And so with that, we love active engagement from you all. So questions, comments, sharing your own experiences. That's exactly what we want to see from you all. Is required? No. Does it make the classes better? Yes. So it's your opportunity to engage with TMF professionals, to ask industry experts hypotheticals. We've had real world situation questions being asked in class, and we do our absolute best to address those. Sometimes, you may stump the trainer. There's very unique situations that are asked. We do our research, come back to you, try to get you a resolution there. So that active engagement, we really try to encourage. We don't enforce. We don't make people ask questions. You're not penalized if you don't ask any questions. You can absolutely be a little bit more passive and just kind of listen and absorb. We all have different learning styles, so we try to accommodate that. But if you're like myself, to ask, that's the way you learn. Please, please, please do that. We absolutely encourage that 100%. Other questions that people ask, especially with our summer cohorts, because there's a lot of times travel that goes on in the summer for a lot of us. Oh, I have travel planned. I'm not going to be able to make 2 of the classes. Should I even enroll? So, what I tell folks is you are actively encouraged to attend all of the classes, right? Is it a requirement to attend the class? No. So if your schedule gets busy, work gets stressful, personal life gets stressful, you have travel, I don't want you to have to log on to listen to TMF University before you go enjoy your time at the pool or hiking or with family or shopping or eating, whatever you're doing on vacation. If you miss class, you'll have access to the recordings. You can listen to those separately. If you have questions, you can always follow up with the instructors. We can jump on a call with you to talk about some of the concepts, so you maybe don't feel behind. If you're listening in, you're like, I don't really know, what they meant by that. I wish I was in class to ask. Email us, ask us. We can jump on a call. We can have an email conversation, whatever is going to be best for you. So you're not penalized if you miss class. Are actively encouraged to listen in on all classes. Again, you'll have the recordings after the fact. So if you know you're going to be gone for a 2-week period, and you're like, well, I'd like to do TMF University, but I'm going to be gone. Well, consider, right? The other thing to consider is life does get hectic, right? So things can happen personally, professionally, that impact your ability to complete the program. So what does that mean? If things just get a little bit too hectic and you're like, hey, I really can't do it right now, am I out all this money that I've paid or my organization's paid? Am I going to have to re-enroll? So let's say you start in the summer and life gets busy, things happen, and you need to step away from the program. Can you do that? Absolutely. You can defer your accreditation typically up to a 6-month period. So if you were completing the summer cohort, we would try to work with you to get it done in the winter or the fall rather. So our October to December cohort. And then if things are still a little hectic, we would look again from January to March. So with TMF University, there is or are assessment portfolios. So it's kind of some of the homework I had mentioned a little bit earlier that we've updated those. So you attend all the classes, it's just the homework that you couldn't get to. That's the stuff that maybe takes people a little bit more time. You can actively work on that in the background. So let's say you say, I can't complete it right now, but I think I'll be able to do it in this next cohort in October, November, and December. Well, if it's July or August, you can just go ahead and still be working on it in the background, and we can just submit it later. So you'll still have some time to complete that. So if life gets busy, don't fret. We'll work with you. There's no shame in that. We've had people do it past. They've come back, been very successful, gotten their accreditation. There's no additional fees for you, so long as you complete that within that 6-month window. So you will have opportunities if things just get hectic. When we built the program, that was something I really try to communicate, is that we need to be very transparent about that because life gets busy. And for me, I never want TMF University to be a burden to anyone. This should be kind of an opportunity for education, engagement, even excitement, say that for folks, and not something that is stressful. So I was very adamant that we need to have this deferral period to allow people to concentrate on personal or professional things, right? Those are going to take precedent over TMF University, in my opinion. So you will have that ability as well. So I think that kind of brings me to most of the topics that I wanted to talk about that we get asked pretty consistently. I know we had a few questions come in before this session kicked off, so I'm sure we'll see those come up. And if you have comments as well, you can feel free to kind of ask those in real time, because again, I want to make sure that I address anything that anyone might want to know about the program. But like I said, we often, when we kind of launch announcement for the town halls, we'll occasionally get a few questions, and then we also just get prospective questions anyways all the time about TMF University, so we try to include those as well. So I'll see what comes up here. I know my folks in the background, they typically load them for me as they come in. Okay, so a question we got before was, will this program help me move beyond just checking boxes and actually become a strategic TMF contributor within my organization? So I think by kind of the checking the boxes is just kind of like, for me, it's that like read and acknowledge training of like, okay, I understand the trial master file now, or I completed TMF University, check, right? Like I went to this class. I do think TMF University does a great job for preparing people to engage with internal and external stakeholders when it comes to TMF management oversight. We talk about a lot of different areas of TMF management and oversight. Some of the things for me that have been takeaways, right? So we'll give a tangible example, talking about being more of a strategic TMF contributor within your organization. I think for me, some feedback that we've received is actually implementing more like TMF champions or SMEs within organizations to facilitate conversations with those functional areas. So when they feel stuck in updating expected document list or the TMF index, you have that TMF champion who understands their function is to support those stakeholders in updating that index, having that information be current and accurate so that when we do TMF reviews, we have a better understanding of completeness. So there's many different areas. There are folks who've maybe been in the TMF space for years, but perhaps they haven't been an active distributor, like they're no longer doing document review, or maybe they're no longer doing like metrics and reporting. Sometimes these classes are a good refresher training for them, or it kind of shows how the industry has changed over the years, since maybe they've been taking that task. There's people who have told me like, they're like, the last time I did document review was paper TMFs, right? And they've never really engaged in document review and an electronic trial master file. We know they're pretty drastically different. So yeah, absolutely. And again, I tell people is, I'm not a salesman. My goal is not to say, TMF University is going to change your life. It's going to solve all of your problems, because it's what you put into the program, right? If you don't listen to the material, if you don't engage, you're treating it as a checkbox of like, I just want this accreditation. You're not going to have those takeaways. If you're an active participant, if you listen, absorb, apply that knowledge, the assessment portfolios are a really great way to demonstrate your understanding. You will those takeaways. So, we can all listen to someone talk for 2 hours, right? Or have it in the background. But if we're not actively listening, are we having those takeaways? So I say there is responsibility or accountability for you as a learner. You have to really take the time to listen to the material and apply that knowledge. But if you do, you can be very successful there. Absolutely. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, great. Okay. So, how customizable is the learning experience within TMF University? Can you focus on key areas? So, this is kind of a great question that leans to, for TMF University, do you have to take all of the courses? So, we offer two accreditation pathways. There's TMF Associate. So, that's going to be our discovery and immersion level courses. That'll be 6 courses total. And then we'll have our TMF Manager, which is our 9 courses total, discovery and immersion and master. So sometimes people don't necessarily care as much about the accreditation, right? They're like, for me, I'm maybe not in the TMF space enough to be a TMF associate or manager. Like, I don't necessarily care about the full accreditation there. Metrics would be something like, I'm really interested in TMF metrics. Maybe I'm a project manager or a CRA or a CTM, and I want to know how to better use TMF metrics for reviews. You could take that one course, right? So you can kind of customize your learning experience based off your goals, and what you kind of want, the information that you want to be exposed to. The content itself of TMF University is predefined based off of our learning outcomes for the accreditation process. So we partner with IAR, they're our independent accrediting agency. They kind of oversee our program. They're the external verification to make sure that we deliver a consistent and comprehensive program for TMF professionals, and that we're just not out here kind of doing or in an unregulated manner. So we kind of have some oversight there that says these are the objectives that we need to accomplish within TMF University to deem you a TMF associate or TMF manager. So we kind of have these core deliverables that we have to achieve in the program. However, within each course, this is the part about active engagement. Can you ask specific questions? Yes. Can you ask hypotheticals? Can you ask real worlds? Can you just kind of create a conversation? Absolutely. So while the content itself isn't customizable. Like when you enroll, you can't necessarily say, hey, can you please add in 20 slides about this? We can have those conversations as part of each class. So we can bring that up in real time. One of the things for every class, or at the start of every class rather, is say, what do you want to talk about today? Is there a problem area? Is there something you're curious about, something you're not confident in? So that's how we start each class. And I will say, I've probably changed from 9 out of 10. I'd say maybe 8, 10 times somebody says something that's already in the material. I'm like, great, we'll get to that. And I'll say a lot of times it's like one of the last things that we talk about in the class. It always cracks me up. I'm like, that's a great question. That'll be one of the last topics for the day, but I'll get to it, right? There's occasionally, 1 or 2 times folks will have their own specific topic that they want to actively talk about that's maybe not included in the material as a default, but we do our best to weave that into the conversation. And I think we do a really good job there. So can we customize the material? No, we don't customize the material, but can you ask specific questions and use this as an opportunity of engagement? Absolutely, you can. So if there's like specific metrics you want out, specific tips for audit prep, or like if you say, hey, we're doing this as part of our audit prep, do you think we should be changing something? We can talk about it in class, right? So there is that level of customization as far as like asking questions. The content will be pretty consistent. Obviously, like I said earlier, we update the content every so often to make sure we're still aligned with best practice, current regulations, and sources. But we don't necessarily customize it if we get a question, kind of have that conversation. So good thoughts there. That's a common question I always get. So I'm glad to kind of continue to go over that one. May, I'm just doing a quick time check here. Yeah, I got 20 minutes. So maybe take 2 or so more questions. How will TMF University support me if I don't have a strong background like regulatory, TMF, clinical operations, but I want to grow in this space? So, as mentioned, our traditional model really is built for folks with no experience wanting to get into the industry to 20 years experience. We get pretty consistent feedback. That is one of the challenges, right? So when we deliver the courses, our classes may have someone with no experience and someone who is currently like a vice president of TMF operations, and they kind of have everything, right? And they just kind of want to make sure they're filling in all the cracks within their organization. Is there anything they're not doing that they should be doing? And so the folks who don't have any experience, sometimes they'll kind of express that at the beginning, like, I'm going to learn. And so they're often the ones asking the questions because they're new to the space. And so we really try to break down the material so it's digestible for anyone that has no experience to many years of experience. We try our best. In clinical research, we love acronyms. We try our best to not throw a million different acronyms your way. We try to use like the full terminology for a lot of our concepts so that people don't necessarily say like, oh, I've never heard of that before. We try to really break things down based off of just kind of general expectations. So for anybody who's maybe looking to break into the industry, and says, will this be a good start for me? Again, I tell people it depends on the role, right? Like if you want to be in the TMF base, I would actively encourage like the TMF associate accreditation, perhaps kind of the entry level accreditation. If you're maybe someone who's wanting to be more in like QA or data management or, even like clinical operations, I'd say, well, maybe not the full TMF University program, but maybe document QC, right? Like you're going to be generating documents as part of your role. I think it's really important to understand best practices there. Maybe our intro course that just gets you familiar with the TMF, because even if you're not a TMF manager or TMF associate or a document reviewer, you're probably still going to be interacting with the TMF. So it's good to know the importance. So we can tell you, you may say, hey, this is my goal, right? I want to get into the industry. This is the role I want in the industry. What do you think will be beneficial here? Again, I like to have transparency. I'm not here to sell you and say, you need to absolutely do that TMF manager accreditation if the role that you want is like a safety specialist, right? I'd say there's some transfer there. For you as a safety specialist, the big things will probably be document QC and audits and inspections, right? Those 2 courses. Why would I have you sit through the other 7? Unless you're just really a lifelong learner and you like absorbing that information. I mean, we've had people from QA, from safety data management, complete the full accreditation because they're just lifelong learners and they want to know more. But I want to make sure that we meet your needs, right? And so for me saying, oh yeah, if you take this accreditation, it's going to help you in your job search as a safety specialist. partially, right? Like you'll have some familiarity with like document standards, but not as much from a safety perspective. So just some things to consider there. Let me look. Oh yeah, I think maybe one more question might be good, and then can adjourn because we're getting to close to 30 minutes. So let's see if we got one more here. Oh, great. So this is a question we get all the time about like interviews, job placements. How can you communicate the value of this training? People will say like, help me get a job. Does this guarantee me job placement? Do you all help with job placement? And so like as a standard, we don't necessarily help with job placement. Like we won't um, send you like job descriptions or like open positions, but people asked us in the past, like, hey, this job has come up. Do you think this might be a good fit for somebody who's gone through the program? Like we can answer those types of questions and say, yeah, that's like in the TMF space, or, that's actually going to be more of like a QA type position. So we can certainly have those engagements. The great thing about TMF University is we do have, and this is another question we get often of like, what type of hands-on experience do you get when you participate in the program? And for me, it's that practical experience of how you do document review. So you're looking at documents for quality, looking for mistakes. We have you do assessments of like completeness of the TMF and finding specific pieces of information. We ask you situational based questions about concepts of TMF management and oversight. So we kind of put you, I often joke in TMF University, it's kind of like a driving simulator. We kind of have you in a low risk environment. We kind of put you in that simulation environment and allow you to kind of get the look and the feel, get the feel for the steering wheel and the gas pedals and kind of how big a car is. But if you crash into a pole, your car's not going to explode. You're not going to be in really any real damage because it's a simulation, right? Kind of the same mindset here with TMF University. We're giving you the skill set to operate in the real world environment and have those discussions and interviews. Again, entirely dependent on your ability to participate and engage in the courses and the takeaway you have. So we will give you tangible things to talk about in interviews and concepts. However, it's dependent on you as that learner. So that's just kind of the one thing that I always mention there is, again, we've had people give feedback. They were able to like feel more confident in interviews because they were able to talk about like what metadata was, to give examples of like metrics that they would like to use and how they use metrics to make decisions, things like that. Because in our metrics course, we kind of talk about when you see a metric, what do you mean, right? How do you dissect that metric? How do you make the next decision as to what needs to be updated, what needs to be reviewed, who needs to be maybe retrained or reminded of something. So yeah, you can absolutely have that takeaway from TMF University if you apply yourself. Again, people, you just kind of sit and listen, and then you go into an interview, and you've never really kind of applied yourself in the courses, it may not be transferable, right? So you got to keep that in mind as a learner. Active participation is going to be really encouraged there. I think we're right at close to 30 minutes. So I'll wrap things up for us today. Again, I try to do these every quarter just because we get questions. We're about to kick off a cohort. I want to make sure we address as many questions as possible. Registration is live on our page, so we can make sure that goes out for everyone that does want to register. Or if you have follow-up questions, you can also reach out directly. There's contact information on the registration page as well for our website. We're happy to answer any questions that you all might have if they weren't discussed today. But do just want to take an opportunity to say thank you. Hopefully, I'll see some of you all in our upcoming cohort in July. If you have questions, let us know. We also have here at the bottom an upcoming session next week. My face again, but also join with Laurel Ann, one of my colleagues at TransPerfect, to talk about essential documents from draft to final. So ensuring documentation makes its way to the TMF, one of our biggest problems. So feel free to join us there as well, if that's something that's of interest to you. But thanks everybody for your time today. I appreciate it. Everybody enjoy your weekends. If you have questions, reach out. Otherwise, hopefully, again, I'll see some of you in our next cohort, and talk to everyone later. Bye.